going to hand over to Mary Richardson to introduce the team and to present the report.
Great. Kia ora koutou. Thank you for the opportunity to talk to the report. I think everybody knows Brent from our legal team who can respond to any questions around the lodging of the plan, and also Barry, the chair of the Kaha Project Delivery Company. So just want to kick off today just to clarify exactly what the purpose of the report is today, and then we'll hand over to Barry to talk about just a bit of context about what's got us here and the drivers for the increase, and then we'll focus on what the options for consultation are. So just want to be clear today that the purpose of the report today is actually to agree on whether to go to consultation, and agree on the consultation. That's not about making a decision today. So the decision today is about the consultation. You won't be making the actual decision until July, at which time you will actually be able to consider the views of the public that you've got feedback with, along with financial advice, advice from the company, and other expert advice. So the community views or outcome from the consultation is just one of the things that you will be using to inform your decision making in July. So really clear, it's not a referendum that we're doing at the moment. It's just giving you the opportunity to know community views before you make a decision. So I thought that first, before we actually get into what the options are and the process for consultation, just a reminder to people about why we're here and what has driven this increase. So.
Thank you, Mary. So in August 2021, the Council approved a specification and a budget of $533 million to deliver the Te Kaha project. The board then went through the pre-contract services agreement with B6 Watpac, and we went from concept design through prelim design. We have completed developed design, and as a result of completing developed design, on the 27th of May, we've received a final bid submission from B6 Watpac that has led to an evaluation from the board that we require up to an additional $150 million to be able to deliver the specification that was agreed in August 2021. The increase, based on our evaluation, is primarily due to an overheated construction market, which has led to a significant increase in the price, which is due to what has occurred over a long period of time with COVID, and the construction market situation has been constrained and added to due to the Ukraine war crisis, which has led to material shortages, labour shortages, significant increase in material prices, and significant uncertainty in the construction market, which is leading to a risk premium being placed on prices that we have received. We received a non-compliant bid, so a portion of the price we received was not fixed, and we have evaluated that risk, and that is included in the $150 million budget increase that we have requested. We are in negotiations with B6 Watpac to try and achieve a fixed price and to agree a design and construction contract so that we can make a recommendation to Council on the 14th of July for your consideration to go to design and construction with the project. And you can make that decision on the 14th of July, whether that is a yes or a no. Thank you.
Great, thank you. So just as we move into the proposal for consultation, since posting the report online, we have had a number of queries both from elected members and from external people outside the council about the options. And so just wanted to propose a slight amendment to the options that we go to consultation with, and those are now up on the screen. So the first one stays as it was. So the first option is still to invest up to an additional up to 150 million to enable the project to continue, and that's the one that is already in there. Stop the project altogether, which is already in there, but it's that third one just wanting to clarify what that one means. And so we are proposing that is actually about pausing and re-evaluating the project. So that's about making sure that we need to stop and rethink the whole strategic case of the project, negotiate with the Crown and other partners what the critical design elements are before we go into that design. Because we can't just go straight into design and say to the designers, just design us a stadium, or we don't know whether we want you to take off the roof or how many seats we want. Or so that actually is about pausing, re-evaluating before we move forward. The other aspect that we also wanted to have some clarity on, and we will add into the information, is on the next slide, is just some of the consequences around accepting the cost increase. So we do need to be clear in that information that will be online is more information about the rate impact on households, and that will be available to go up there, up on the website and in the material. Just clear that this decision will bind a future council. We are close to an election and this will bind a future council. Clear that the future council could decide to stop or reduce other capex or opex as a substitution rather than a full debt rate increase, and also clarity that there are risks of further escalation depending on the contract that the company's able to negotiate. And so that won't be clear until 14th of July when you're making decisions. So that will just be added to the background material that's available for consultation and for the public. So that's probably it about the consultation, but also did just want to touch, because there were queries about the two other aspects that are mentioned in the report, and that's the early works and the lodging of the plan and amendment to the district plan. We need to be absolutely clear that this is not about predetermining an outcome of the consultation. These are first, the early works has been agreed to. A lot of it is under contract. The company have put as much as they can on pause while the consultation's on, but there is a small component that will move forward because it's either under contract, it's about land improvement that would need to be done, whatever the case, whether a stadium is built there or not. That's archaeological stuff, decontamination, and if it wasn't done and you decided to go with option one, it would have delayed the critical path for a month. And that is an escalation of $2 to $3 million per month of escalation, approximately. Similarly, with lodging the district plan, again, this is not predetermining the design. This is lodging it now, and it can be withdrawn on the 14th of July if it doesn't go ahead. But again, it just allows progress to start on the design that we have at the moment. If you determine the first option is the option you want, it stops that month delay, which again, as I said before, a month delay of something on the critical path is $1 to $2 million, or might be $2 to $3 million escalation. It's 2 to 3, isn't it? $2 to $3 million escalation. So those need to be clear with the public and with you that that's not predetermining an outcome of consultation. It's just good financial sense. So that's probably all we have to say, and perhaps open for questions.
Thank you. Just one question, just in relation to that. Are you saying that this will be spelt out in detail in the consultation material that will be available to the public?
Yes.
And it's so that they understand the consequences of the different choices that they're being asked to provide feedback on?
Yes, so the consultation material has a brief of each of the options and their benefits and their consequences. There's also a series of FAQs all questions and answers, as well as other material that's up there. Also links to all previous reports and information and the timeline, which clarifies when Council started to lead this project. We are proposing that the consultation will start at midday tomorrow, which would allow us to actually just update the information to reflect the decision you make today.
Yep. I mean, I think there's very much a desire to get the feedback from the public in relation to the options, which is why clarity is really, really important. Sam?
Yeah, just a quick one, and thanks very much, Mary and the team. Do you want to just touch on that last point around the risks of further escalation depending on the contract? I wondered, Barry, if there's just at a really high level, appreciating it's commercially sensitive, to talk through, I guess, the comfort the community can have that when we go out and consult, that we won't be going back again should something happen. So can you just touch on that?
So two things. It's really important to understand that the current proposal we have expires on the 15th of July. So in a number of cases, and a significant portion of the proposal we have in front of us now is fixed. But if we go beyond the 15th of July, all those current fixed prices expire and we're at risk. And we have been working closely with B6 WAPAC to really define and understand the risk sharing component. And we're in negotiations with them now to fix the price on those elements. So the $150 million budget increase allows $10 million for the risk associated with the unfixed portion of the price. And we're obviously in negotiations to try and firm that up by the 14th of July.
So just to be clear, I mean, it is absolutely a risk that there's escalation, but we're relatively comfortable that we're not going to have to go out again and consult based off what you know so far.
So we've allowed significant contingencies in the $150 million sum. So we are confident that we will not have to, if we accept option one and the proposal that we have on the table at the moment, we're confident we won't have to go out again.
Okay. All right. So that risk around further escalation would be reflective in obviously not the closing option or shutting it down, but the delayed one as well, wouldn't it?
Yes. So
correct.
that the delayed one already mentions risk of escalation.
Cool.
Yep.
Thank you. That's great.
Jimmy Chen?
Okay. Regarding the three options, particular focus on the engage or inform the central government. The option one, not necessary, right?
That's right.
We can do all that.
Yep.
But option two and option three, we have to kind of inform or also engage with central government.
Yes.
So this project is a partnership project.
Yes, so we have the cost share agreement with the government, and we also have a funding agreement with the government, which both bind us to the project. The funding agreement binds us to some key fundamentals, which we have to deliver on it. So there would be negotiations. We have been in very close discussions with Treasury, who are representing the Crown in this practically every day or two, having discussions with them, keeping them updated, making them aware of what's happening. They have said if the fundamentals change, the ones in the funding agreement, we would need to renegotiate with them, and there may be a point that they decide not to put their money in anymore.
Thank you.
Celeste?
I guess I'm kind of still a bit worried about the framing, which is seems to be go, stop, or pause. So one sounds quite positive and the other two sound quite negative. With option three, I'm wondering whether we can actually go back to redesign to existing budget, because really it doesn't need to be a pause if we have a budget already that we've kind of allocated. It's really just a decision around where we prioritise that spend, and that doesn't need to be delayed once we hear back from the community.
It would need to be delayed, because you can't give a designer just design us something in that budget. Because we need to, as with the current design, we spent quite a bit of time identifying the key fundamentals, the key functionality, the key aspects of the building that would impact on OPEX and CAPEX before we actually gave design instructions to the designer. A designer won't start a project without instructions. So they would need instructions from council and flowing into the community board, the company that would need to actually detail that about what aspects are critical. Is it seat numbers you reduce? Is it concourse you reduce? Is it roofing that goes? What aspects of the turf elements go? There's a lot of aspects we would need to be clear on before we instructed a design.
Okay, and I hear what you're saying. I'm just worried that it might sound a bit vague saying reevaluate, whether that's going to be clear that it'll proceed regardless, but the details are yet to be determined.
I don't want to be in a meeting where we try and wordsmith this, but you're trying to capture up something like review critical elements or something rather than reevaluate. So
yeah, I just want it to be clear because I think how we frame it is what's going to determine people's response, because they'll make a series of assumptions.
I won't try and wordsmith in a public meeting.
No, that's fair enough. The other quick question is, in terms of the 150 million, will we be making it clear? Because I understand that there's a lot of value management stuff around the design and the different features that are going to be sort of pared back in the proposal that will be what we've put in within that 150. Is that going to be clear when it goes out to the community that effectively we might have a very simple stadium that doesn't have any of those world-class features that we'd kind of perhaps thought we might have if we didn't have the situation that we were currently in?
The value management that's being undertaken is not on the design fundamentals. It's on the construction methodology to see whether we can construct the building in a cheaper way. So we are not compromising the design fundamentals that have already been agreed.
Great.
It's the number of seats and
number of seats. I mean, this is
concourse.
don't forget, this is a partnership with Venues Otatahi, Te Kaha Project Delivery Limited and the council. So the relationship between the specification, the cost and the program is very tight. And so we are constantly reconciling back to the original design fundamentals. So none of those are at risk during this value management stage.
Great. Final quick question is, will the fit out be included in the information? Is that part of the 150?
The fit out?
So the interior sort of...
The fit out is part of the total budget.
The total budget.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Seats. Yeah.
It's that.
There will be.
Yep.
I've got a list of councillors: Pauline, Jake, Phil, and Mel.
Oh, thank you. Look, just with the option 3, pause and reevaluate. Is it correct? Just remind me that in the cost share agreement, the Crown expects us or requires us to put a roof on, or a drip roof.
So in the funding agreement, which is the latest document that we've signed with the Crown, so probably the one of the key ones, it is the key fundamentals are a minimum of 22,500 permanent seats. It's a roof stadium and it's multi-use, so it can be used for sport and events and non-game day functions.
Great. So my question is that if people say wanted a reduced scope, providing we fitted that criteria, we would not need to reconsult on that.
No, but we would need to negotiate with the Crown because of a potential time delay, because there are critical dates. So we'd have to, if it was going to be delay was going to be too long, we'd have to discuss that delay with them. But as long as we keep those other fundamentals, their funding is guaranteed.
Right. So is that clear? Will that be clear in the consultation?
Yes. Yep.
That option, if it fitted those criteria, would not require another consultation. That's just leading on from what Sam was.
Yep.
Thank you.
Jake?
Just on that funding piece, in August last year we had a resolution that said that the Mayor would work with neighbouring councils and ECAN on capital and or operational funding. Mm-hmm. And I know there's a meeting next week to discuss capital. Can I just confirm that that's the first meeting to happen with regard to the capital piece?
There have been, We have written to councils 3 times now, just keeping them informed. The project team gave presentations to councils. I think there's been 3 presentations of the project team to councils. One of them, all the councils were intending to attend, but everyone went into lockdown, so I think it was only Selwyn and Waimak that were able to attend that. The CE of Venues Otatahi has visited each council individually and spoken to them, and the discussion next week is with the ECAN Council. And then from there, we have had discussions with other councils, some other councils, not all of them, about then meeting with them as well and having.
We just don't have direct visibility of this. I'm just trying to clarify the conversations that have taken place. Has there been a specific ask for a contribution to the capital budget of the project?
No, so you will have seen in the FAQs that were attached to the report, and I know the report was late, so you may not have time to read them. It outlines all the interactions we've had with the councils. Up until recently, we haven't had to talk about CAPEX because we had the Crown money and the council money, so there was no requirement for CAPEX. So the discussions were always going to be on the OPEX and the bid funding once we got clarity on what that was.
There was a resolution last year that said
yes. So last year in August was when we actually started to approach the councils about further funding, and definitely now with this escalation there's the real immediate need to actually look for CAPEX funding as well as OPEX funding.
There was a discussion regarding capital with ECAN before that, though,
Yes.
Because we know who was.
That's right.
But it was there have been discussions before,
from ECAN about a capital
but
injection.
that didn't produce a result.
No.
Okay, so is there any minutes or anything of that if we've had a conversation about a capital contribution?
No, it's but I'm just saying that there has been, and it takes us down a pathway in terms of other assets. So I'm just saying it's not straightforward.
So
Not straightforward. Yeah, and councillors have been.
Councillors were briefed on that, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, the black man.
So Phil and then Mel.
I'd just like to say I'm happy to move this, please, Leanne.
Yep. Tim. Okay, Mel.
These are questions for Leah, if I'm able. And this is about our debt headroom, our council's, and that's obviously explained in the consultation material.
Yep.
So I've sort of got a 3-part question. Well, I guess maybe 2, but the first is with those years 25, 26, 26, 27, that's where if people, if we end up going ahead with the current project, that's where the debt headroom would reduce, would get really, really close to it. So if, say, a large event was to happen in those years, like the Alpine Fault or something like that, what do you see? How do you foresee that what would happen to that headroom? Like, because we would potentially use it all up. So, can you explain like what the process would be, or what the dangers for council would be at that time?
Well, I mean, there's risk with anything like that. But to be fair, if the Alpine,
Can you speak up, Leah?
Sorry. To be fair, anything like that's a risk. I mean, that's the whole point of actually having the headroom of the 400. So it just gives us that extra, the 400 million. That's the basis of having that for emergency. But if something significant like that happens, we would assess everything that we do, right? So don't forget, this is a projection of debt that we're going to be borrowing at that time. So if something major like that happened, all our capital program would be considered, and everything that we're doing, we would be considering what we're doing. But the benefit of having that 400 is absolutely so that we have that buffer to actually, from day one, we've still got some buffer there to actually deal with emergencies.
And then the second part is, because it mentions in the report that future years will be impacted, obviously, by the water reforms. So can you comment on how you see that maybe being changed?
So the water reforms is a risk to this. And the reason it's a risk is because we actually don't know yet the impact on our debt program, a debt that will be repaid. As we know, was it last year when we actually got the numbers, our projected debt at the time in relation to Three Waters, and the assets was about 6 billion and we had about 1.1 projected debt. Now, if we get that, then we will be fine in a neutral. But of course, our revenue drops when Three Waters goes out, so we lose about 300 million of rates revenue. So our revenue number, so our key number is net debt to revenue. So both numbers change. So if we get that 1.1, government's listening, I hope, then we will be neutrally, we'll be fine. If it's a lot less than that, then obviously this impacts on that as well. But the cold hard reality, it is a risk because we don't know at this stage.
Thanks.
Yanni?
Yeah, thank you. And thank you for the information in the report. I just want to check several things. One is we keep talking about council having to fund the cost, and I appreciate that, we're ultimately the ones that will be making the decision. But in terms of raising revenue, has the idea of like a ticket levy been thought about? Because I'm still, I guess, interested in the idea that the people that use it would contribute more than just the general public for the benefit that they receive.
So you will note that the report and information talks about the fact that while we're at consultation, because this report's only about consultation, it's only about what we go to consultation on. During consultation, there will be further work on revenue options, on discussions with other neighbouring councils and all other aspects.
Okay.
So we're not going to stop any other work while we're at consultation. They're out to consultation to get the community's views, and in the meantime, the company will carry on with their work around the contract. VO will be looking at all options around OPEX and CAPEX, and we will be looking
It
at
is
other
pretty standard for a fee to go on to ticket prices in an
like at a
initial
high
period after a build. It's
yeah,
very
like
standard.
at a higher level.
Theatre Royal's done it.
In the alternative funding options, it's not really explicit. It's very sort of general about VO as the operator. I guess I'm just concerned that we're explicit that could be a funding option, that you could, have some sort of ticket levy that contributed to the rebuild of it.
Great. Okay, so we can, if you're happy with that, we can add something into the Q&As around funding options that will be explored.
The other one that I've raised in the briefing, but I don't see answered in here, is New Zealand Rugby. So what discussions, if any, have been held with New Zealand Rugby around either their financial contribution or their use of the arena? Because I know in the past when we've discussed this, some of the rationale around the types of events that we would get are reliant on us putting in incentive bids, and we've been given, as I understand it, and it may have changed, zero commitment to host All Black games. We just have to compete with all the other cities in New Zealand
So
on an annual
there's
basis.
been, to my knowledge, no further discussions other than the discussions we'd previously reported to you. So there hasn't been any previous discussions since we were made aware of this situation, but Carolyn will be able to talk to the discussions she's had previously.
Yeah, so the All Blacks really, they won't commit to any stadiums. It does come down to competition, and at the end of the day, they're a commercial entity like all others that make choices around where they're going to generate the most revenue, albeit there will still be their social delivery around the country as well to make sure that everyone gets to see their national team. But I'm not sure that it's fitting by way of this discussion around funding options and how this shortfall will be addressed.
Right, but given that we've heard in the media pretty strong advocacy from rugby around the need for a new stadium, have they not offered anything in the way of support?
So we've had very close discussions with the Crusaders, both the VO and also Council, and they are committed to supporting the stadium and committed, as far as they've told us, to staying in Christchurch and supporting the stadium. but they're not in a financial position to make a financial commitment to it.
Okay, but does the increased capital cost in any way change how much we would expect them to contribute as a user? Or is that purely just focused on the operational side?
The commercial terms of what a tenancy would look like is a wee way off in terms of agreeing that, but it wouldn't necessarily be relevant to the capital cost.
Okay, thanks.
Mike?
Thank you. Could you just remind me when we last consulted with the community on the stadium?
The report, so in August, the report outlines that in August there was significant feedback from the community. It wasn't consultation that we generated. It was actually...
So I'm obviously aware of that, but in terms of actually a direct consultation with the community on the actual stadium itself, when was the last time, or have we actually consulted on the stadium?
It would have been as part of the LTP.
Just generic.
Just generic.
When did the money first go on budget for it? Because I think there's been a lot of misunderstanding. The money first went on budget in the 2016 long-term plan. So there was no money on the budget for the stadium at the time of the 2013 decision to sign the cost sharing agreement. Is that right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So 2016 it goes on the budget for the first time, and it was pushed out to the end of the long-term plan because we didn't even have our insurance settlement at the time. Is that right?
Yes. Yep.
Right.
I'm
just
wasn't
trying to
here, but I'm
just
basing
trying to
on the documents
spell out
that
through the timeline that you've got there, which I don't think some people have actually read the timeline. So because the 2016 decision was the first time that it appeared, 2015 LTP was the first time it appeared on our budget.
Yep.
And so the LTP was consulted on, and people were asked to provide their views and preferences in relation to adding the stadium to our budget, which which people did comment on it. Some people commented on whether it should be brought forward, and some people commented on pushing it back. So, there was discussion around it, but no, there wasn't specific consultation on the stadium as a standalone item under that agreement. And it was pushed out. We hadn't settled our insurance. We settled our insurance, I think it was November or December 2015. So what we didn't know when we became the council in 2013 was that there was a provision in the cost sharing agreement that says the council will stump up for its share regardless of the insurance settlement, which is pretty unheard of, I would say. And I think that's why we we wanted to review things relatively quickly, but weren't in a position to do so.
And it wasn't until 2019 that Council actually formally, through the global settlement and also through the investment case and funding agreement, was identified as the people that would lead this project. So it wasn't until 2019 that Council took the leadership role on the stadium.
In 2019, the government put in
$220 million was signed up to.
And the investment case identified, it wasn't until the investment case, so that was December 2019, where the Crown supported the investment case and approved it in the new year, that said Council would take the lead on this project.
Yeah.
So up until then, it was unclear who was going to be leading this project, whether it was going to be a Crown-led project or a Council-led project.
Well, it was reviewed in 2017 after the election as well, because there was a decision to, and I can't recall the basis for that, but there was a decision to look at whether the stadium and the Metro Sports facility could be joined up as a single project.
Yeah, so back in 2017, I'm just referring to the timeline that pulled together for this. So back in 2017, there was a pre-feasibility study that was commissioned by the Crown.
Yeah.
and that looked at four different options for the stadium from there, and that involved a considerable amount of stakeholders in that discussion.
Yeah.
From there, it moved on to some due diligence work that was done, again looking at those options about a hard shell roof or retractable turf. Again, a lot of stakeholders in consultation around that, and then straight after the election, there was the review of co-location site swaps, and a decision was made. And so, but that was still, it wasn't clear who was leading the stadium project. So it wasn't until the investment case that it actually, when the Crown adopted the investment case, that they agreed that council was leading this project.
And it was on that basis that the council adopted the responsibility for the funding side of it.
Yes.
And the Crown adopted the funding side, any increases on the Metro Sports.
That's right. Yep.
Yeah.
And it was at that point that the council made a resolution to form a company to deliver the the arena.
Right, so that's a helpful question, Mike. But the answer is no. It hasn't been specifically consulted on with the public, but it has been consulted on as part of the LTP process.
Yes, and each
LTP
subsequent LTP, it's been and there have been a number of submissions on the stadium.
Yeah, but it wasn't actually called out as a project within the LTP like we do for a number of the significant.
I would need to go back and check. I'm sure it was.
In 2015.
I'm sure it was in 2015 because it was added to the budget when it hadn't been there before.
So just another question. So we obviously at the time capped our contribution to 253.
Yep.
And obviously, if the government's contribution taken off the current estimate, it's leaving now that cap at 463. So we're getting obviously
483. Don't let me just do put some. So Crown contribution to my memory is 220 plus 10 for the land, and then about 59 million approximately. Oh, that 10 million is the land decontamination, 59 for the land purchase.
But that's not. Is that included in the
yes,
actual?
Yes, it's included in the total project price.
And then there's 253 as council's contribution, so the total was at 483 until August when another 50 was added. Okay.
So I'm just looking at the rates increase for the additional amount, which is obviously in 25-26 looks like it's just about 1% increase. And that'll go in the consultation document. We'll also include in the consultation document the whole impact of this stadium on ratepayers. Because it's not something that actually we've consulted on for a long time. So I would have thought that actually for the people to see how much of their rates go into this individual program is actually quite informative.
So that top question there that says more information on rate impact on households, we've just released that, and we did it in two areas. One was the extra 150, what it would be on the average residential, and what the total from a council contribution would be, so they can compare it. Okay. So it is given now, today, based on the information we have now. Obviously, things like rating growth and interest rates and all that impact that, but to put it in perspective, I think at the average residential rate for the extra 150 was $39. And then for the total was 144. So that's including the 144 includes the extra 150 if we go down that way.
Okay, thank you.
And that will be, that's why we've put it in there, that will be available in the consultation material.
Okay. And what about the second option where stop the project? Do we actually show how much the rates therefore would be forecast to be if we didn't have it on the books?
We have mentioned that but we haven't quantified it. We've noted that it hasn't been quantified, but we could do that because we will add more things to the consultation material as we go. But we do need to start consultation.
Thanks.
Right. Are there any additional questions? Sarah and then Yanni.
Thank you. I know that there's a lot of questions around potential additional funding sources, and I'm just wondering when we and people are putting a lot of hope on it. I guess the question is, what are the chances of a meaningful contribution from a regional rate? When I look at the Canterbury Museum and others, and we're 2/3 of the population of all of Canterbury. Most of the rest of the population is quite a long way away. Just so that people are mindful of and realistic about a meaningful contribution to either CapEx or OpEx when they're discussing it.
You have to ask for
I
it first.
think that will be subject to our discussions with ECAN and the other territorial authorities.
Yeah.
So we wouldn't want to preempt any of that discussion, but we can certainly, as more information comes to hand, make sure it's put out into the public arena for the consultation.
So I know that the Canterbury Museum, we pay 90-odd% still.
Yes.
Of the OpEx.
Yes.
Yeah. Cool.
Yeah.
Yanni?
Thanks. I was just a bit concerned to hear comments that council hadn't made money, I think I heard, available for the stadium, but we actually did do that in 2012. We put on borrowing of 58 million.
This is the 2013-2016 three-year plan.
Yeah.
No, this was the 2012.
The 2012 doesn't count. That was pre-cost sharing agreement.
Right. Well, actually, the government was supposed to do the agreement to have the unaudited 3-year plan with central government was that the cost share would be signed by the 1st of April 2013. But because that didn't happen, and I don't know why it didn't happen, but that meant that the 3-year unaudited plan had to be sort of modified with virtually no public consultation on what was happening.
Correct.
But the money was, and there was money put aside by council prior to the blueprint for the stadium to raise it up to 35,000 at Lancaster Park.
Yes, I know, but that wasn't the money for the rebuilt stadium at a new location, which completely undermined the insurance negotiations. Completely undermined the insurance negotiations.
If you
So the stadium's actually the one reason why we couldn't get our settlement through.
If you think it's relevant for the consultation, we can add it into the timeline, though.
I guess if council was just able to get on and rebuild the stadium, do we kind of have a sense of when that would have happened?
2019. Well, December 2019 was when we were able to actually start the project.
In the business case, in the timeline, I didn't see the deadline for the government to provide the business case, but I thought that was June 2016.
It was, but we'd taken it and pushed it out in our long-term plan before that date.
So
Because we didn't have the money to put on budget.
But we didn't even, it wasn't even clear that we were doing it.
Could I just clarify, since we're discussing the
We were always
consultation
committed to
today,
253 million. They
Yeah, no, I
couldn't
know
do
that.
the business case without it. They went fundraising and they found nothing.
Right.
They
yeah.
wanted the private sector to build it, not the government.
Yeah.
we can certainly add any of these aspects into that timeline. If you want to send them through, we can check them and add them into the timeline if you think they're relevant.
I think it is worthwhile having a proper narrative around the history of how we got to where we got to. But I kind of want us to move on from here.
Yeah, I mean, we need to.
We got to where we got to, and now we have to move on to the next stage. So
Yeah, I think I was just trying to pick up on I think one of the questions that was raised around what consultation with the community had happened over what was proposed. And I just felt like the start of the time frame just makes it seem like it was just the Central City Recovery Plan. But we actually did share an idea and did an unaudited 3-year plan that did actually consult the community on various aspects that we put in terms of budget. So,
but that didn't include moving the
no, because we didn't
into
make the call
city.
to move. I mean, we didn't make the call on the blueprint.
You want the draft Central City Plan process and share an idea actually built into the timeline.
Yep.
And that's
Well, it's the it's the
an important part of the narrative.
Sorry, it was the unaudited 3-year plan that because the stadium is barely mentioned in Share an Idea because it was Central City, and the stadium actually, even though it was in Lancaster Park, is actually not in the Central City plan.
So we will definitely
It was in
update
it.
the timeline.
Yeah.
We may not be able to do that by tomorrow morning,
No, that's
but we
okay.
will.
The
I just-
timeline can be added to, so
Absolutely.
because it's an attachment, as it were,
Yep.
on the page, and you can easily add in bits and pieces.
Yep.
But I agree with you, Yanni. It's the narrative is actually important, and it's kind of like we are where we are, and it's useful to have the public understand how we got to the position we're in today, and then to move on. So, and we've got a very clear set of questions that we want to ask the community to feed back to us, which will help us make a good decision.
Thanks. Just the final question from me is, like, in the report, it talks about cost escalation of, I think it's 10%. But obviously the quantum that's been sought is far greater than the cost escalations that have been signalled, in the market. So are you able just to give a sense, I guess, of that difference and what it's consisting of? And also just, I guess the concern that people have raised with me is that the professional fees, the 40 million or something, on consultancy and design, and just seems really high. But I know in the report you've mentioned about 3 or 4 different aspects, including early enabling works as well. So I was just wondering if you can kind of give an overview of that breakdown.
I think the overall cost escalation from August 2021 is a 20% increase in the construction costs. The professional fees are only moving by the time it takes to complete the program. So we haven't had an increase in the fees on a per hourly rate. It's actually that because the project has been pushed out to extend from February 2025 to April 2026. There's been a 10% increase in the overall project administration because of the increase and because of the delay in the program. So we've had a 20% or 25%? 25% increase in the construction costs over a period of effectively 9 months. And that's the market. And every other major, every other infrastructure project in the country is experiencing those cost increases.
Right, that's the questions. Phil, would you like to kick off the debate?
No.
I just think we've come along a long way, a very long way, and now's the time to let people tell us what they want, give us their feedback on their consultation. As we have heard, it's not a referendum, it's not a vote, we just want to hear what people think. So I think just the sooner the better, and let's get going.
Thank you. Andrew and then Melanie.
Thank you. This is a difficult situation by any standard, but today's decision, in my view, is actually the easy part of that difficult situation. The more substantive and likely the much more difficult decision comes on the 14th of July. There are just 2 things that we are asked to determine today. The first is whether we consult, and that's easy because we need to consult in order to responsibly proceed in any direction from here. And then the second question, of course, is what we consult on. I'm very comfortable that we put out the 3 options proposed for consultation. All 3 are real options, and the response to all 3 will help us make the decision that we need to make in July. The thing that I'm most keen to ensure is that we've got sufficient supporting information in the consultation document so that people can make informed submissions with a full understanding of the consequences of the choices that they're making. And having heard the presentation today, I'm comfortable that we can do that by way of that further explanation and detail set out as proposed. So thanks to staff for the work done on that. There's been a lot of opinion expressed since this additional cost and extended time frame went out into the public arena. Certainly over the last few days, I've heard a lot of very different opinions, some expressed more strongly than others. Just as I've moved around the city in the last few days, people, clearly have got some views on this. But now's the opportunity for people to make those views known and to have their say as part of this process, for us to listen, for us to understand, and then to really take into account that consultation feedback. Because the decision that we will make on the 14th of July, and we've got to make a decision, is a big decision for the city, and in fact for the future of the city, whichever way it goes. And it's important that we take the public feedback into account. In order to do that, we need to get the public feedback. So the message to the people of Christchurch is, please do take the opportunity to have your say.
Melanie?
I wasn't going to say too much different, actually. I just want to make sure that everyone who makes a submission reads all the information that is provided. I think it's really important that people make decisions based on information, as well as what their values are that they hold to. So I'd implore basically everyone to have their voice heard. Make a submission. You can email the councillors, you can post on Facebook, you can write a letter to the editor, you can talk to your family, your friends, colleagues, but make sure you make a submission, because those other things don't count when we haven't seen them as a submission. Make a submission, get everyone you know to do the same, and get the young people to have their voice heard too.
Aaron?
Yeah, I suppose you could say this is as close to a referendum as you'll get on it, because there's a yes and there's a no, and there's a maybe. And I think the way forward is people in this town can speak up. There are people out there that don't want a stadium, and there's people out there that want a stadium, and annoyingly they keep coming up to me and saying, why isn't the stadium built yet? And whinge and complain, and they ambush you in the supermarket and the bar and walking down the street. And this is their chance to actually tell the council what they want. If you don't want a stadium, speak up. But if you want a stadium and you've been complaining about it for the last 10 years, speak up. This is your one chance ever. Because if a whole lot of people come back and say no, if we're going to listen to the people, there won't be a stadium. So if you really want one, make sure you speak up. And like Melanie said, read the information if you want. But I think a lot of people have already made their mind up. Well, I say that because most people vote with their heart, not their head, and that's what they do around a stadium. They want it, and so they will hopefully come in and let us know. That 30,000 petition last time, imagine if we had 30,000 submissions on the stadium. That would be a phenomenal turnout, and it would make all of our long-term plans and annual plans pale in comparison, but it would be a clear voice from the people. So I look forward to hearing them, and in fact, I'll be disappointed if 30,000 people don't submit.
Jimmy?
Mayor, yeah. The Christchurch multi use and the arena, the Kaha. This project, I believe, every citizen, every the ratepayer in Christchurch all concerned this project, because this project not only in relation to this generation, but to the future next generation, maybe next generation as well. So every ratepayer and the resident are eligible to have their say, and also my view should be getting involved more positive. Then the mayor and council, when the staff feedback, we know, actually what is the community, what is residents, their the intention, or their the kind of the feedback. That's very important. I also would like to emphasize, because of this city, we are aware this city is a diverse, inclusive city. We do hope through this consultation, public consultation, encourage and support everyone can feedback. So particularly regarding to the English as second language, before all our consultation, long-term plan, strategic document, etc., is less the feedback. I do hope this time we can support them, encourage them to feedback regarding this one. Because this project is belong to us, we belong to this project. Thank you.
Tim, and then Anne.
Yeah, thank you. I think for me, there are two really important things here. Some people have made a mind up, as others have said, yay or nay. But what I'm asking, one of the two things is, please make your submission. We need to hear from you. The second one is, when you're making your submission, really take your time to look at the future, because whatever you decide, if it is yes, then we've got to build a 21st century stadium, or there's no point doing it, because it will be a white elephant. And when I say a 21st century stadium, 10 years ago, if someone had said to me, and I've been in the industry for 30 years, oh, e-games are going to be amazing. I went, yeah, I don't even game. But 5 years ago, you would have started thinking, actually, this is something to look at. Today, it's huge. But if we did not have a roof, it wouldn't be here. It would never come here. So there are things that you have to do when you're making your submission. There is a bit of work to do about looking at the future. Whether you're saying yay or nay, please make it an informed decision. That's all I'm asking, but please make a submission. Thank you.
Anne?
Yeah, it is crucial that given the huge consequences of this decision that we're going to make on the 14th of July, that people give their feedback. And obviously the way to do that is online. It's quick and easy. There's a form to fill in. If you can't go online, you can go to your local councillor and ask them to help you. You can go to the service centres and ask them to help you. I'm hoping that because there's such a short amount of time for this consultation from the beginning to the end, and there's so much information sitting behind here, that that many residents could face barriers to make a decision because of the difficult to understand information, particularly for those, as Jimmy has said, who have English as a second language or who have difficulties with reading. So this can prevent people from getting involved. We must overcome these barriers, and I believe the Coms have worked really hard to make this information and this process accessible. We have translation services online on our website, and we also are beginning to use easy read information, which is really critical as well. So this info will be also shared through all a long list of stakeholders. And I really hope that community leaders and connectors within those stakeholders will do their best to get the info out to their communities so that we can hear from them. It's vital that we get feedback about this really important decision from as many people, from as many different communities, representing the widest range of views as possible. This consultation starts midday on the 10th of June and finishes on the 5th of July. So that feedback can be analysed and ready for the council decision to be made on the 14th of July. So finally, an acknowledgement to the hard work of all that have been involved here to get us to this point. And we really very much appreciate it. It's very challenging times, but we thank you for all you've done. Thank you.
Is there anyone else? Yanni?
Thank you. I do think it's really important that the community gets to have a say in what we do, and hopefully in time there can be lessons learned in post-disaster recovery, and hopefully one of those lessons can be that when you announce a really amazing blueprint, you've worked out who's going to do what and who's going to pay for it, because that's really at the heart of why so many of our anchor projects have been problematic, is that when the blueprint was first unveiled, there was no agreement around who was doing what and who was paying for what. And ever since, we've had this ongoing issue between local and central government working out who contributes what, who does what. So I think, what's really sad for me in this, and there was a brilliant letter in the newspaper this week, that maybe it's more cost effective to sell off the CBD site for housing and put the stadium back where it used to be in a light industrial area, not surrounded by new houses, in the shade of a giant stadium. Any future noise from sports and concerts, as well as the shade, could be quite off-putting for many. As for the new proposed cost blowout, it is a real shame, I think, that we weren't able as a council just to get on and rebuild the stadium or repair the stadium at Lancaster Park, whatever choice we may have made with our insurance company and settlement. Because this has been an ongoing issue, waiting for business cases, waiting for investment cases, waiting for the land to be acquired, demolishing heritage buildings. All of these things, I think, have contributed to the lack of progress on this particular site. And I still wonder whether or not it's the best outcome for the central city to have such a large thing put right in the middle so close to residential houses. I walked around the new convention centre the other day, and one of the things that occurred to me was, as we were developing Share an Idea in our central city plan as a council, was the importance of having activated edges around buildings in the central city, so that when people come into town and walk past the new buildings, that there's activity happening. And as I walked through on a beautiful sunny winter day around the new convention centre, to see no activity at all around a massive block in our CBD was just such a shame, I felt. But anyway, I look forward to hearing what the community have to say. I do want to remind people that I know, although some people have been upset that they don't have a brand new stadium for our rugby teams to play in, that we've still got communities who will be waiting over 30 years for their broken infrastructure to be repaired. Some of the communities in the east have put up with broken roads and broken infrastructure, waterways being degraded, footpaths, potholes, and so on, that are still not being fixed for a very long time. So we have a lot of priorities in the city, and there is an urgent need to consider the best use of our resources.
Celeste?
I'll keep it short. Like everyone else, I just urge everybody to take the time to read the information. We as a city need to really think carefully about any trade-offs of any option. It's not just a question of the financial costs, it's the questions of fairness, it's the question of priorities, it's a question of who pays over the longer term, and also who benefits from this investment. So I just think it's really critical that we get the broadest range of feedback from all sectors of the community so we can make a good decision when this comes back to council.
Pauline?
I'll be quick as well. Look, a huge amount of work's gone into this, and it just what something Yanni said, actually, this has been being worked on for many years. It's not as if people have been sitting there doing nothing. There's been many barriers to this, as we've heard throughout the debate. So it's not like people have done nothing. And for me, it's not just a black and white decision here. We've got the pause and evaluate option, which will actually encourage and allow people to put in some other ideas they may have, for instance, rescoping it. And we can see the pros and cons of that in the document as you drop down the sheet. So I think it's a really clear document that people are going to be able to understand and use easily. So I'll look forward to the response from the people of Christchurch on this. It will be very interesting. And thanks for the work, and thanks for the work to come on this.
No one else? Sarah?
Thanks. Firstly, big thanks to staff who have turned around the information in the consultation documentation in a really short time and with some really, really long hours. So thank you so much for that. It's been huge. So both council staff, the board and others, it's been huge. It's really important that we consult our communities on this, as there are considerable risks across the various options, and I'm really looking forward to hearing what our residents have to say. Te Kaha is the last piece in the rebuild jigsaw for our city, and we do deserve a stadium. What our communities also deserve is a council focused on the issues at hand and on taking responsibility for its decision making, not on casting blame on others as a distraction or zingy one-liner personal attacks in their public discourse. When a discussion is focused on attacks instead of putting forward a rational argument, it simply lacks substance and the debate on the issue itself, and that does a disservice to our residents. Previous councils have made decisions in good faith based on the information they had, but what the community expect of us is to take responsibility for listening to them and for making a decision. We are the council. We have all been in for nearly 3 years, some much longer, and we need to take responsibility for the project and for the decisions we have made. We also need to make the decision on the assumption that we won't get a meaningful capital injection from others. The other councils are much smaller than us, and any contribution will be minor compared with what is needed, much like the Canterbury Museum proportions. We definitely need a stadium, but ratepayers' pockets are not bottomless, and if we spend too much now, we will limit our ability to have effective solutions for other issues, shifting the organics processing plant, rebuilding South Library, or adapting to climate change along our coasts and rivers. And the decision we make in July will be one that the next council will have to wear, either as a large rates increase or significant cuts to core roading, water, community programs and projects. The next long-term plan will be a really tough one, and saying so had me accused of scaremongering this morning, but it's not. It's simply realistic. This is the first time that our communities have had a chance to have a real say on the stadium, and I'm looking forward to hearing from them.
I'm really looking forward, as everyone here has said, I'm really looking forward to what the public have to say on this one. People sometimes think that we pay lip service to the idea of consultation and that we don't actually listen. But I'm sure I speak for everyone around this table to say we do, and on this issue, this is one we're going to be very highly attuned to. And in that consultation, I don't just want to hear from the people that have really firm views, pro or anti the stadium. I want to hear from those that don't have such a clear view. I'm in that camp as well. I think there are a lot of people who didn't like this project or did like it from the outset, who have had their opinions challenged with the latest information. You have the people who never wanted the stadium, but who recognise that perhaps it's gone too far to stop. You have the people who supported it from the outset, but didn't expect the cost burden that has befallen us. And you'll have the people who felt either which way at the beginning of this process and will be disappointed to see the options to reduce the scope will in no way guarantee we pay less for a reduced stadium. In fact, we could even pay more. So in short, there are no firm answers, and it's clear with this project that there's been lots of delays and lots of promises that have not panned out. For example, it's disappointing that we don't have information about how much of a contribution we can expect from our partners. I don't believe, like some of my colleagues, that this information is immaterial to our decision, and it's a shame we don't have it. But as they say, it is. But as they say, we are where we are, and it is what it is. And I look forward to hearing the many and diverse views of our community as we seek to come to a collective one on behalf of the people of Christchurch.
No, I'm happy to listen to the people of Christchurch. I'm more than happy to just listen to the people of Christchurch. So.
And I guess there's an element of the debate that's occurred outside of this place that has been vaguely frustrating. Sometimes a headline will be used in a story, and then that becomes the story without reference to the content of the actual one. I was quoted apparently of saying that the stadium was a white elephant before I became mayor. But actually I found the article because I had no memory of saying this at all. And what it said in reference to that was that if I was elected, that one of my first goals would be to arrange a meeting with the government to talk about new ways the stadium could progress with more outside investment. And that was their desire at the time too. So I had literally tried to take a position to support the building of the stadium right from the very start, but with the context of a really good deal for the city. I didn't know what the cost sharing agreement said. None of us knew what the cost sharing agreement said before the 2013 election. And it is such a shame that we get ourselves into these positions. And I think Yanni's made a really good point. The minister at the time made the point to the media that this was a legally binding agreement that had been well traversed by both parties. So that is an indication to the response I got from the government of the day when I did talk to them about the elements of the cost sharing agreement after I had read it for the first time. It wasn't published until December that year, so the public didn't even get to see it until much later. But that's by the by, that's history. But I do want the public to understand the history because this council put money on budget for it. We did so before we had the settlement of our insurance. That's why we pushed it out as far as we did. It is really important that we make a call to get on with this or bring it to a close. I just think that, and I mean, I know how I'm feeling about it. It is absolutely the final piece in the jigsaw. I think Sarah Templeton put her finger on the nail of it, or nailed it, when she said that. And it is the last element of the anchor projects that were designed to give confidence to the private sector. I think of all of those private sector companies and organisations who have invested their hard-earned resources into developing on the basis that there is going to be a multi-use arena located where it has been allocated in our central city plan. So I think the sooner we get on with it, the better. Right, so I shall put the motion. All those in favour say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The ayes have it. It is carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much.